Event planning is 85% administrative chaos and 15% actual event. Most people would call that a nightmare. I call it the most important part of my job. Welcome to Events Unscripted, taking you behind the scenes of a world where details matter and people count. If you have ever looked at event planning from the outside, whether that's from your own experience planning a wedding or a community event, or scrolling through an event planner's social media, it looks like it is all execution and production. The pretty tables, the stage setup, the crowd walking in. And that part is real, but it is about 15% of the actual work. By the end of this video, you are going to see the 85% of the work very differently, not as a burden, not as a deal breaker, but as the thing that makes the entire event possible. And honestly, it is the part I fell in love with. Let me be honest with you about what I thought a career in event planning was going to be like. My career actually started in administrative support. My past roles included administrative assistant, executive assistant, and office manager. In every role I held, there was always a piece of event planning baked into the job. And those pieces, they were always the fun parts. I got to think through color schemes and centerpieces. I got to weigh in on the menu and be part of the tastings. When I visited venues, I was thinking about how the color palette would work in the space, where we would set up the registration table and the silent auction. When I think back on those experiences, the only administrative work I remember doing was collecting RSVPs, creating the silent auction bid sheets, and making name tags. On the day of the event, I was always at the sign-in table. That was it. When I did venue walkthroughs, I honestly leaned on the venue's event coordinator to tell me what to do. They were the expert. I was just there to pick the pretty stuff. And that made sense at the time because the full weight of the event's success was not on my shoulders. There was always a planning committee spearheading the event, and they, along with the executive director, did the heavy lifting. So naturally, since this was my experience over and over again, I believe that's what event planning was. When I made the decision to pivot to a full-time career as an event planner, I thought to myself, oh, I am going to have the coolest work life. I get to visit beautiful venues, and they do all the work on that end. I can surf Pinterest all day, putting together mood boards and creating centerpieces. Easy street. I had no idea how wrong I was. In my very first video, I talked about a few surprise realities I walked into when I started doing this full time. That video is linked above if you want to hear that story. But today, we are going deeper into one specific reality that completely changed how I understood this career. So let me paint a picture of what the reality actually looks like. And I am going to use an analogy that I think will make this click. Have you ever ordered something for your home that you simply had to have? You saw it online and you knew without a doubt you had to have it. You are checking the tracking information, counting down the days. Finally, you receive an email with the delivery date. You already know exactly where it's going to go. You expect some assembly and you are ready for it. Then the package arrives in this box you are certain couldn't possibly be what you saw online. The box is way too small. You open it and there are 193 pieces, a bag of hardware, and a sheet of instructions that looks like it was written for an engineer. Before you can enjoy this item that you were so anxiously waiting for, you have to sit down, sort through every piece, follow every step, and make sure the thing is sturdy enough that it will not fall apart the first time someone puts weight on it. That is event planning. The event itself is a beautifully finished product, but before anyone can enjoy it, those 193 pieces have to be assembled. And that assembly is the administrative work. It is everything that needs to happen to make sure the event is safe, organized, and ready for everyone who will experience it. And just like that item you ordered, if you skip steps or ignore the instructions, it is going to wobble. Same thing with an event. Skip a step and something wobbles. And a wobble is not something you can hide. I have definitely caused a wobble or two. And honestly, every single time I go into the planning process with every intention of creating a flawless, wobble-proof event. That is always the goal. I have not experienced every possible situation or every event type, and close to 10 years in, I am still learning. And my goal after every event is to grow and get better for the next one. And if a mistake happens, because it will, give yourself grace. I had to learn that one the hard way. I used to beat myself up over every single thing that went wrong. But the truth is, the mistake is not what defines you. What you do with it after is what matters. So that you know, I am not exaggerating when I say 85% is administrative work. Let me share what some of that actually looks like. After that first meeting, whether it is a committee meeting, a client meeting, or whatever that first sit down is that confirms all of the details for the event, you are at your computer. From that point until event day, that is where you live. You are nailing down the basics: event date, time, location, anticipated guest count, and understanding the catering needs. Once the basics are locked in, you are scheduling follow-up meetings, drafting the initial agenda for event day, and getting a clear understanding of the spending budget. I remember thinking, when do I get to the fun part? And that is just the pre-work. The budget might be one of the most underestimated pieces of the entire job. I can't wait to do a full video on building a budget. We might need to make that one a happy hour theme. Bring your wine. Wedding planners, don't tune out on me here. Most couples know how much they want to spend total, but have no idea how to divide that money across all the different categories. And honestly, that is a challenge for all of us, no matter what type of events we plan. How do you know how much goes to food and beverage? How much to the venue? What about the photographer? Will there be enough left for a videographer? How much for printing? Will there be branded swag for attendees? If so, how much can be spent per person? I could keep going, but we would be here for 3 more days just talking about expenses. And here's the thing. For most events, a budget is not just expenses. You also have to think about income. How is this event going to pay for itself and generate a profit? Then there is real-time financial tracking, managing invoices and payments, purchase orders, check requests, vendor W-9s, keeping up with revenue. The budget alone is a full-time conversation. Then there is vendor management. This one is a process. It starts with collecting and reviewing proposals and quotes, comparing vendors to find the best value without compromising service, maintaining contract lists, coordinating walkthroughs, requesting certificates of insurance, especially when alcohol is being served, and keeping every vendor in the loop when changes happen. And changes happen constantly. There is also constant communication with the venue because something is always shifting. I learned early on that before I could move forward with any change, I had to understand how it impacted the venue's setup, their staffing, their timeline. One change on my end could create a ripple on theirs. And then there is attendee management. Depending on the organization, this could be a partnership with the marketing team, or it could land entirely on the planner. Either way, it involves building a full marketing plan, the save the date, the registration page, and go live date, tracking registrations, and creating engaging social media content. Oh, and guess what else comes with this? Customer service. Answering calls from people who are having trouble navigating the registration site, fielding general questions, and processing refunds because someone did not check their calendar when they registered and now needs to cancel. And then there are the emails, the countless, never-ending emails, following up with the client to make sure they have completed what they are responsible for, sending soft reminders to marketing to make sure they are on track with the TikTok post according to the communications plan, sending the 11th email to 3 speakers who still have not sent their bio and headshot, making the 8th change this week to the rooming list for the hotel, and sending yet another email to the photographer requesting their W-9 so the check request for their deposit can be completed. Closer to the event, it is sending the caterer updates with registration reports and dietary restrictions, and rethinking attendee arrival and flow because registration has surpassed the original plan. I am going to stop right here because I know that was a lot. And the wild part, we have not touched a single piece of the actual event production. The first time I fully realized all of the admin work I was doing for an event, I thought to myself, I should have just stayed an administrative assistant. Have you ever wondered why a CEO is so dependent on their executive assistant? Why they turn to that person before answering a simple question about whether they're free for a meeting? It is because the executive assistant is the wizard behind the curtain of that CEO's work life. They know the when, the where, the who, and the what. They sometimes even know the what size. What they are doing is managing the details of the CEO's professional world. Drop one ball and the CEO might miss the call that would close that multi-million-dollar client. Miss one email and the CEO might show up for a meeting across town that was canceled that morning. Working as an administrative assistant, you would think managing multiple things at once was a breeze and familiar territory for me, but it wasn't. It was different. As an admin, I was responsible for one person. With events, it was like managing 20 CEOs at once. Being new to managing so much at one time, I for sure dropped a few balls. There was a time I did not make a timely update on current event expenses and income, which caused my manager to report wrong numbers in a meeting. Another time, I almost lost a caterer 3 weeks before an event because I missed the final payment deadline. The admin work is not busy work. It's the thing that keeps everything from falling apart. And when it falls apart, it falls on you. Let me tell you a story that taught me why owning the full process matters so much. In one of my roles, we were planning an annual dinner for members. This was a formal event with assigned seating and a plated meal. Closer to the event, my manager and I would sit down with the event chair to create the seating chart. My manager gave me one piece of this process, and she kept the rest. My piece was simple. Update the RSVPs in the customer relationship management system as they came in. But here was the problem. I was only receiving a piece of the RSVPs as opposed to handling the entire process myself. My manager would give me notes about different RSVPs received, such as, this person is now attending. That person confirmed they will have a +1. It seems this would be okay to get a little information here and there, but in the end, it proved to be a big problem. Fast forward to event day, and I'm creating registration packets. Inside each packet were place cards, and if a person had dietary restrictions, that card was also included in the packet. I only had a piece of the information, so when I was assembling those packets, I messed up more times than I could count. I had people in an envelope by themselves when they were actually someone's guests. I had a husband and wife in 2 separate packets because they had different last names. I was new. How was I supposed to know? The process was so painful. I think I went into the bathroom and cried at least twice that day. Fast forward to the next year. I had complete ownership of that dinner, including the entire RSVP process, from start to finish. Do you know how smoothly it went? Not one issue with the registration packets. Not one. And do you want to know why? Because I was the owner of the entire process. I understood how everything was connected. Since I was receiving the RSVP cards, I knew who was a guest of whom, who was married, who the sponsors were. I was the connector of all the parts. Every piece of information fed into the next. And when one person owns the full picture, the risk of details falling through the cracks are minimized. All events are like an 89 car train, and event planners are the connector keeping every car on the track. Grabbing the cars you like because they are the fun ones with the best view and leave the rest behind because they seem boring is not an option. They are all connected, and when even one car comes loose, it is felt by the entire ride. Trust me, I have watched a car come loose. Honestly, my first year and a half in this career, I don't think there was a single week that went by where I didn't cry. It was hard. This career pivot was not what I was expecting, and I felt like I could not get anything right. But every single one of those hard moments taught me something I would carry for the rest of my career. Do you want to know why event planning always looks so effortless from the outside? Why the planner seems to have it all together? It is because the 85% makes the 15% a breeze to execute. Going back to the ordered item analogy, when you put all the pieces in place and follow the instructions, you have a sturdy product everyone can enjoy. Nobody walks into the room and thinks about the 193 pieces or the hard-to-follow instruction sheet that came with it. They just admire how the item complements your space. No one knows how many times you slammed the instructions on the table, got up, and walked away, or were on the verge of packing it all up and sending it back to the manufacturer. But when guests compliment what a great choice you made, you forget about all of that and immediately start showing off the cool features. That is what happens on event day. You forget about everything that happened before, the parts that prepared you to be the expert in the room. You find yourself firing off answers to questions without even thinking about it. An attendee needs help, and you can solve it immediately because you know every detail of the registration process. Someone from the team can't remember their assignment. No problem. You don't have to guess. You can rattle that information off from memory because you built the run of show yourself and know this event intimately. I used to think the magic was in the 15%. Event day, the big moment. But it's not. It's all the work behind the scenes that makes the event what it is. And that work, that was me. And if you go down this road, it will be you too. I love the 85%. And I know that might sound strange to say about spreadsheets and email chains and budget tracking, but here is why. When you have had that level of involvement, when you have touched every contract, tracked every dollar, communicated with every vendor, and thought through every detail of the attendee experience, that event becomes more than an event. For me, it was like my baby, and I was super protective over my baby. I did not see it at first, but over time, I realized I was not just doing admin work. I was the person turning a chaotic, tedious, and unattractive thing into something real that people actually walk through and experience. That's not just a job, that's a responsibility. And honestly, I would not trade it. The event is the destination, but the administrative work is the vehicle that gets you there safely. Before any road trip, there is work to do. You check the oil, you check the tires, you map the route, you pack the car. There is a lot of preparation before you ever hit the road, but it's that entire necessary process that gets you to your destination in one piece. The 85% is not the boring part. It is the foundation of everything your attendees will experience. And once you see it that way, it is not a deal breaker. It is the reason you stay. Now, everything we talked about today was the work that happens behind the desk. But there is another side of this career that nobody warns you about. The physical toll, the long days, the achy feet, and the reality of what your body goes through when an event goes live. That is what we are going to talk about next time. That is all for this one. If this was helpful, subscribe so you do not miss a thing. Wherever you are in your event planning journey, this channel was created with you in mind. See you next video.